Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever, wherever you are listening. Thank you so very much for making me a part of your day. My name is Lee Parham. You might know me as Lego Lee or Lego Lee 329 from Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Patreon, you name it. I am all over the internet, and this is the Brickology podcast. And welcome back today. I really hope you are doing well today. The world is in a very weird place. Obviously, I've mentioned for probably 10 straight episodes of Brickology about the pandemic, and I hope that you are staying safe. But also, currently in my country, my home country of the United States of America, there's been a lot of craziness happening, and I do not want to get political on Brickology whatsoever. This is a podcast about Lego, but I just think, it's something that needs to be addressed, and yeah, I think everybody knows what's going on, and we need to do our best to kind of help and stop things that are happening. I'm not going to really take a stance or anything here, y'all, but I just hope and pray that things can get better here in my country. And if you're in other countries, I'm sure there's other horrible things that are happening that I'm just completely unaware of. The world is a broken place, and I really hope that this podcast, it's a podcast about Lego, but Lego is something for literally everybody, unless I guess you're over 99, because they had that meme where it's like once you turn 100 you can't play with Lego anymore. But all jokes aside, Lego is for everybody, and I want to make something that can appeal to literally anyone in the entire world. So welcome back to Brickology. It's episode 17. We are in the middle of season 2. It's going great. My streams are doing really well. I am just absolutely so pleased with how this podcast has been going here, and I'm excited for this episode. Now, if you've been following Brickology, you know that I alternate each week between doing a licensed Lego theme and then an original Lego theme. So last week was about Lego Star Wars sets based off episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. So that means by the pattern this week is an unlicensed original Lego theme. And for season 1, episode 6, I talked about the first year of Lego Ninjago, all the Lego Ninjago sets that came out in the year 2011. This is the 6th episode of season 2, episode 17 overall of Brickology. And you know what? Ninjago is ridiculously popular. It's the most popular unlicensed Lego theme out there, and there's a lot of Ninjago, and I want to cover all of Ninjago here on this podcast, but covering all of that theme is going to take a lot of episodes, like how I'm doing Star Wars by each individual film or TV series or whatnot. I'm going to do the same thing for Ninjago, but I'm going to break it up by seasons or years. So essentially what I'm doing here, this episode is going to be called Ninjago 2012. Now, some people call this the 3rd and 4th waves of Ninjago. Some people might call it Ninjago seasons 2 or 3. Disclaimer: I do not watch the Ninjago TV series. I watched some of it back when it first premiered back in 2011. I even watched some of the stuff I'm about to talk about here in 2012 when I was much younger. But since then, I don't follow the TV series. I'm not familiar with the TV series lore. I did some research so I can get, my facts right in this episode, but I don't have time to sit down and watch, an entire season of Ninjago just for one episode of this podcast. So this is going to be a loose representation of the show's knowledge, but I have a good knowledge of the Lego sets, and obviously, I've given myself this title of Brickologist. I think I'm qualified to talk about the sets themselves. So this episode of Ninjago is going to be about Ninjago strictly from the year 2012. I'm not going to use season numbers because I know the season numbers get kind of confusing. So essentially what I'm going to be doing for Brickology is I'm going to be doing Ninjago by year. So the next Ninjago episode, which will be in season 3, I'm going to do one Ninjago episode a season. Will be Ninjago 2013, and then season 4, Ninjago 2014. I think you guys can catch on to that pattern there. So this is Ninjago 2012, and that is the topic for this week's episode of Brickology. Now, as I do often on Brickology, I kind of like to set the scene before we actually talk about the sets from our particular theme. Now, if you want to know more about Ninjago, listen to my first episode about Ninjago from last season, season 1, episode 6, about Ninjago sets from 2011. I covered a lot of the history of the theme in that episode, and I don't want to repeat myself here, and I also do this a lot in Brickology. It's a completely, utterly shameless plug to listen to an old episode of this podcast, and that is one of my top 5 most streamed episodes, which is obviously one of the things leading me to doing more and more Ninjago episodes. Now, I think it's important for me to kind of set the scene for the year that these sets came out in, and that is 2012. I honestly am considering it would be kind of different, but tell me if you guys would like to hear this. An episode of Brickology just called Lego 2012. 2012, I think, is probably the best year for LEGO ever. It's seriously such an incredible year for LEGO. It was a pretty crazy year for media and stuff. There was a lot of stuff going on in 2012, and LEGO in 2012 was just off the charts. DC and Marvel superheroes were released that year, which is humongous. Lord of the Rings sets were released that year, and the Hobbit sets as well, which were big for me in my YouTube channel. I'll definitely do an episode about Lord of the Rings in the future of Brickology at some point. And then Ninjago. Now, Ninjago obviously premiered in 2011, not 2012, but I think Ninjago peaked in 2012. The popularity of Ninjago in this year was insane. In hindsight, it doesn't seem that weird because Ninjago has been very popular for LEGO for almost a decade now. I mean, next year will be the 10-year anniversary of the theme, and it was really big in 2011, but I think it exploded in 2012 to what I would call unprecedented levels. Like, these sets were flying off the shelves. They were legitimately hard to find, and some of the spinners that we'll talk about later in this episode, specifically the green Ninja spinner, I mean, that thing was a hot commodity. That was like gold. People found that spinner and people would scalp them up and sell them for ridiculous prices on eBay. It was really weird because that doesn't happen a whole lot with LEGO. Usually, you know, LEGO sets can be popular, but they're not super hard to find. But these Ninjago sets in 2012 were huge. I remember so many YouTube channels really jumped on this opportunity. Like my channel, some of my videos from this year got tons of views. My Ninjago videos from 2012 got so many views, and lots of YouTube channels really just grew and exploded in popularity because of Ninjago set reviews. It kind of became like a craze, and getting the Ninjago sets early at Toys R Us was like a really intense thing. That was, you know, how you got noticed if you were a LEGO YouTuber. I would say it was a phenomenon. I don't know if Ninjago is really much of a phenomenon anymore. It's still very popular, but you know, things aren't flying off the shelves like they were, and it's insane. It's just such a crazy level of popularity for this theme. 2012 for Ninjago was its peak in terms of popularity. Now, I don't think it's the best year of Ninjago in terms of set quality. There's some kind of weird sets this year, and we're going to talk about them all on today's episode of Brickology, but in terms of just pure popularity, people were obsessed. It was absolutely wild. It was like pandemonium trying to get these sets from stores. Now, before we talk about the actual sets, we can talk about the story shift. So the first season in Ninjago, the bad guys are Garmadon, who does return. So Garmadon is a consistent villain through pretty much all of Ninjago still today. But the bad guys, the first season in Ninjago, were those skeletons. The second season, which the name of this season was called Rise of the Snakes, and we get a bunch of snake people, and we'll talk about them throughout all of these sets. Additionally, the ninja kind of changed up themselves. They were all given new gear pieces. The first wave of LEGO Ninjago ninjas, all the ninja pretty much used the classic LEGO ninja look. They had updated, you know, more modern printing and whatnot, but they used the classic LEGO ninja headdress piece, and that's the only time that has really been used besides a couple of random callbacks in various sets for Ninjago. For this year, they completely did away with that headdress piece. They gave them a brand new ninja piece, and they also gave them a shoulder attachment with pauldrons and a spot on the back that could hold two katanas, very similar to the piece from the Prince of Persia sets, and there will be an episode about Prince of Persia at some point throughout Brickology. And these ninja were given the title Ninja ZX, which is very interesting. So lots of new pieces, and there was a new item to collect. I remember somebody pointed out in the comment section for my last Ninjago episode that I forgot to mention the golden weapons. I apologize for completely missing that very important detail in the last Ninjago episode of Brickology, so I'm gonna remember this time. Ninjago always has these MacGuffin chase items to get and collect throughout the sets, kind of like Atlantis had the keys. LEGO does this all the time, and for this one we had the snake staffs. It was a brand new snake staff piece that had a printed 1x1 circle tile in the center, and I believe the circle tile was actually a brand new piece at this point in time. And I remember being like really hyped about this piece, and it's a, you know, very commonly used piece today, and it's kind of weird thinking that it was actually, you know, brand new not that long ago. Great piece, great snake staff, and really cool items to collect. And for the second wave, they had these fang daggers that we'll talk about that aren't nearly as cool as these snake staffs. And the snake staffs are kind of weird and repetitive, and you see them throughout a lot of these sets, but those were the items to chase after and collect in these sets. So without further ado, now we can jump in and talk about all of the LEGO Ninjago sets that came out in the year 2012. Now there's a lot of products LEGO released for Ninjago in 2012. There was tons of polybags and things of that sort. I don't really mention polybags here in Brickology because it takes up time, and I really don't think, people care about superfluous details of that sort. So we're gonna start off by talking about all of the normal box sets, then we'll talk about some of the booster packs and blister card sets towards the end of today's episode. Got it? Okay, cool. Let's jump into the first wave of Ninjago sets that came out in the winter of 2012. Now, when I say winter 2012, it's actually more so November 2011 because I actually got some of these sets at Toys R Us in November of 2011. But on Brickset and Brickopedia, they are still counted as 2012 Ninjago sets, so they count for this episode. And LEGO does that all the time. I mean, obviously, cars do this too. Like, you can get a 2021 model of a car in 2020. So even though these sets were kind of released in 2011, they still count as 2012 Ninjago sets. The first set, the smallest set for $7 with 86 pieces, really good piece count by the way, is the Vinamari Shrine. This one came with Zane. You also got the Vinamari staff, but there was no snake figure. A little bit of a letdown that this set had no figure for Zane to fight, but it did have a pretty neat build. It had a printed snake head at the top with a holder for the Vinamari snake staff, and it had this snake launching play feature. They made this new snake piece for this wave that was a little bit different from the OG LEGO snake piece. It had more detail and kind of like a King Cobra-esque shape, and there was a cool feature in this set where you pushed a button and it launched some of these snakes at Zane. This was a very solid $7 impulse set for this first wave. Okay, for $15 with 188 pieces, we had Kai's Blade Cycle. Of course, it included Kai. You also got Ratla, who is a rattlesnake variant for these snake figures. Very cool. You got the Hypnobrai. Hopefully I pronounced these names correctly. The Hypnobrai snake staff. And this set, you might have guessed it, I complain about this all the time in my LEGO reviews on my YouTube channel and IGTV. It came with an oversized motorcycle build for Kai. And Ninjago, I mean, this was not the first oversized motorcycle. They had one the first year Ninjago. It's not the last one you're going to hear about today. Ninjago loves these oversized motorcycles. They're still doing like one or two a year, and so many other LEGO themes have followed suit with these ridiculous motorcycle builds. But you did get an oversized motorcycle build for Kai. This one, it was really beefy. It had a lot of cool curve pieces. It looked pretty good, but it was like extremely large. But it had a very cool transformation play feature where both sides could open up to reveal some blades, so like some little added weapons, which was a cool play feature, and it also kind of helped to the lore of it being, Kai's blade cycle after all. And the side build for this set was a small shrine side build that could hold the Hypnobrai snake staff, and this set was actually remade for Ninjago Legacy just last year in 2019. However, it looks a good bit different in the remake. I'd actually say the remake is worse than this version, and it's a lot smaller. We're not going to focus on the remakes here, but if any of these sets were remade at some point in the future, I will talk about that throughout today's episode of Brickology. Okay, for $20 with 242 pieces, another very good price per piece, we have Jay's Storm Fighter. Of course, it included Jay, and you also got the Snappa snake figure, and this one came with the Fangpire snake staff, and this was a jet plane build for Jay that had a interesting, very similar feature to Kai's blade cycle where you could push a button at the back and the wings kind of opened up to reveal some hidden blades. Not sure how the blades would help this thing fly because the wings would actually completely change shape, and I think it'd make the vehicle a lot less aerodynamic if it were a real vehicle, but it was a cool mechanism nevertheless. And this was a very good set for $20. It was a very large design, and I actually bought this set myself back in November of 2011, and I believe I was one of the first people, if not the first person, to review this on YouTube at the time. It's one of my top 10 most viewed videos ever with over 38,000 1,000 views. That's just an illustration of how popular and huge Ninjago was at this time. This set also came with a small side build of a shrine that could hold the staff, and this set, like Kai's Blade Cycle, was remade in 2019. However, the remake of this set was actually $40. It had, I think, about twice as many pieces. It was actually a pretty solid deal, but it was much bigger than the original version from 2012. Now, for $30 from this line with 327 pieces, another very good price per piece. We're off for a good start with the price per pieces for this wave, which is not going to continue later on in this episode. We had the Rattlecopter. Love the name, and you can kind of guess what this vehicle is. It is a helicopter for the snakes, and this kind of introduces us to the snake color scheme. The snake color scheme is lime green, dark green, and purple. A very striking color scheme. It looks very, very interesting. And you know what? I don't love it. It's not my favorite color scheme. Lime green as like the main base color is a bit obtrusive to the eyes, if you ask me, but it was bold and they had some good designs for the snake heads. Now this in particular came with Kai. Kai had the only side build in the set, which was a jetpack that went on his back. They actually used some snowshoes as little wings. Pretty cool little jetpack build. You also got Fang Shui, have no idea if I said that name correctly, and Lloyd, or just Lloyd, Garmadon, which we'll talk more about that character later on in today's episode. And you got the Constrictikai snake staff. I might have completely butchered that name yet again. This was a cool build. It had a cool feature for spinning the rotors of the helicopter. It looked pretty cool, but again, that color scheme is kind of ridiculous. Now, for $40 from this first line in 2012, we had Cole's Tread Assault. 40 bucks, 286 pieces. Wait, that's pretty disappointing because the last set was 30 with 327 pieces. This one's 40 with less parts than the $30 set. Now, I will say, I did have this set. It's a big, kind of Batmobile-esque looking vehicle for Cole, a big, ground-based vehicle. It was a large vehicle, and honestly, I think $40 was a completely fair price for how big the vehicle was itself, but that price per piece is still a pretty big oof on this set. It included Cole, of course, and Scales, very original name for that figure, and Scales was a very cool snake piece. It's the first time we're going to talk about the specialized snake bottom leg piece here. Now, LEGO has done some specialized leg pieces in the past. Mermaids from the Pirates of the Caribbean line, from Toy Story, Woody had those long legs in his first appearance. They have short legs, they have mid legs now. There are a lot of custom leg pieces. This one in particular, which they did use later on in a collectible minifigure series for a Medusa figure from, I think, Series 10, had a snake bottom leg piece. So it's kind of like a centaur, but instead of being, half horse, it was a half snake person. All this was a full snake person with arms and legs. Very weird, but it was a very cool bottom leg piece. And this one came with the Hypnobrai stake staff, which we've already seen in this wave. And this was a very striking looking vehicle, lots of interesting angles. And the one thing I never understood though is it's called Cole's Tread Assault. When you hear the word tread, you think of treads. Now, technically speaking, vehicles do have quote-unquote tread on them, so it's not a completely inaccurate name. Wheels have tread on them. This thing was a big wheeled vehicle. It had big rubber tires, and it did not actually have tread. So that was kind of a weird name for the name of this particular vehicle. I remember when these names leaked back in the day, I was like, oh, it's gonna be like a tank for Cole. That'll be interesting. And then it wasn't a tank. It's just kind of like a Batmobile. But it had a very cool play feature. The cockpit in the center and the rest of the vehicle pretty much could completely spin around. You could spin around the whole thing, and you could disguise this vehicle as a snake vehicle. On the underside, it had those lime green pieces, so it was like an incognito undercover vehicle for Cole. It wasn't a super convincing sell, but it looked pretty good, and it was a very valiant effort for an extremely different play feature from LEGO. That's a cool play feature. Even if it's not perfectly executed, the effort still has to be applauded with this Cole's Tread Assault set. For $50 from this wave with 452 pieces, we had the Fangpire truck Ambush. This set included Jay, Zane, Fang Dam, and Fang Tom. These were very cool figures. They had, again, that aforementioned snake leg piece, and their head pieces were cool because they had 2 snake heads each on the end. Very cool looking figures, and even though I don't remember a whole lot about the show and didn't watch it too much, I remember these characters being pretty funny in the show itself. And shocker, the Fangpire truck Ambush came with the Fangpire snake staff, and this was another big snake vehicle, one of the biggest snake vehicles. It might be the biggest snake vehicle actually, at least in terms of piece count. It was a big snake truck. It had the head of a snake, and it had some storage in the middle, and then a cockpit, and then it had a big snake tail. And we can talk about the play features here. It had a chomping feature where you could quote-unquote eat the ninja figures. It also had suspension towards the back, and it had a whipping tail feature that we've seen on all sorts of LEGO sets from Ninjago, especially like for dragons and such. So overall, a very cool vehicle. And this is a pretty big vehicle. I actually still believe I have this one built in my collection, and the side vehicle in this set, though, was Zane's vehicle. He kind of got the shaft when it comes to the vehicle from this wave. His vehicle was a very small snowmobile-esque vehicle that used one of those transparent blue kind of icy looking pieces at the front. It looked pretty good, but it was really small. But actually, kind of strangely, that small Zane vehicle was actually remade in 2019, and it was packaged together with the aforementioned Kai's Blade Cycle set. They came together as one $30 Ninjago set, which I think is pretty interesting. Now, let's talk about the biggest set from this first wave Ninjago for 2012, and that is Destiny's Bounty. $80, 680 pieces, and oddly enough, of all of these wide release sets in this first wave, this is the only one I didn't get. I don't remember like collecting these super religiously, but I almost completed this entire first wave of Ninjago sets for 2012, which is pretty cool, and it's a cool collection. I wish I definitely have them in a bin somewhere that haven't been completely destroyed, so I might be able to dig them up, but they're definitely not 100% all together. Now, this Destiny's Bounties set included Kendo Kai and Zane. The Kendo figures were kind of like training armor for the ninja. Awesome new pieces, at least a new helmet piece, and they used the old samurai armor piece from LEGO from the 90s. This set also included Sensei Wu, Scales, Slithera, and Lord Garmadon, and it came with the Hypnobrai snake staff. And this is also the first ever incarnation of the Destiny's Bounty ship from Ninjago, which Destiny's Bounty has been a very prevalent vehicle for Ninjago throughout the years, and there has been plenty of different versions of this ship throughout Ninjago's lore. And this particular one had big cloth sails that were also wings, so there's a feature so they could fold up, and there's also a feature that kind of revealed these jets towards the back of this ship to convert this from a sailboat into a flying vehicle, which is a cool play feature. And this set is actually getting remade as we speak. I believe it's available in Europe now for Ninjago Legacy. It's like $130. It has almost 2,000 pieces, but they just remade this Destiny's Bounty, and you can get it now. So it's being remade for summer of 2020. Maybe I should get that set. It's really expensive, but would you like to see a review of it? Please tell me in the comments below, or send me a message or something on Instagram if you're listening on Spotify. So if you are, tell me if you'd like to see a review of that set, because I feel like I need a Destiny's Bounty in my collection. I've missed out on the past few versions, unfortunately. Now, there are a couple more sets to talk about from the winter wave. We'll talk about the booster packs and the spinners, like I said, towards the end of today's episode, but there are a couple more sets. These sets were special edition sets, however. For $25 with 255 pieces, we had the Fangpire Mech. It included Kendo Cole and the Fang Sui minifigure. Now, Kendo Cole was advertised as an exclusive figure, which I find very interesting because you're going to hear his name here very soon. He actually wasn't an exclusive figure, but he was advertised as such on the box. But I guess it's just technically his weapon, which was just a combination of existing pieces that was quote-unquote exclusive. And speaking of weapons, Fang Sui was equipped with a banana. That was Fang Sui's weapon in this set. Now, Fang Sui does have the mech, which is, obviously the main build of the set, but his side weapon that he's holding on the box is a banana, which is kind of weird. Not entirely sure what's going on there. Also, this set didn't include a snake staff, which is kind of strange. It'd be weird if this is like the one set you got from the line and you didn't get a snake staff. That's very odd. Also, it's a snake mech. And when I hear snake mech, I would think it'd look like a snake, which it kind of does from the top. It has the big snake head and it has a tail, but it also has the one thing that snakes are like famous for not having, like appendages. It has freaking arms and legs. It cracks me up that LEGO made a snake mech that has arms and legs. It seems like this would have made so much more sense if it was just like, you know, a big snake, but instead it's a snake with arms and legs. A bipedal snake with 2 arms. I don't really know what to say to that one. I did not get this set. However, for $40, we had a 418-piece spinner battle arena set that came with Kendo Kai and Ratla with their respective spinners. This set included a battle arena very similar to the version that I mentioned in the episode about LEGO Ninjago from 2011, but it did have these cool side builds. There was a dragon head and a snake head that had like a feature where you could like push down the button and it would kind of stomp and try to get the spinners like off balance in the arena when you were like dueling your friends or whatever. So pretty cool play feature, and actually the builds for those looked pretty good as well. It also included a shrine for the Vinamari snake staff and a small weapons rack as well. Finally, for the winter wave, we had what is probably my favorite set for 2012 Ninjago, the Fangpire Wrecking Ball. Sorry for my awful singing again, like I did in the Scooby-Doo episode a few weeks ago. This is, though, the Fangpire Wrecking Ball. $50, 415 pieces. It was a Toys R Us, rest in peace, true exclusive. It came with Kendo Cole, who is not so exclusive to that set he was exclusive to just a minute ago. You also got Fang Dam and Lloyd Garmadon, and it was a big snake-shaped wrecking ball. I can't think of too many LEGO sets to include wrecking balls to begin with. This is probably the only Ninjago wrecking ball, at least to my knowledge. And the wrecking ball itself, it was big. It used a ton of big pieces. It had treads, and it used the Power Miners wheel pieces put together to make the wrecking ball. It was a crazy thing. It was absolutely humongous. The playability was great, and it's a snake wrecking ball. I mean, that's just so utterly ridiculous that I loved it. This is my personal favorite Ninjago set from 2012. Now, one of the reasons it's one of my personal favorites is because I didn't get a lot of the bigger sets that we're about to talk about in the summer, but of all the sets I got personally, this one was the best. But now we can move on to the summer wave that came out around May, June of 2012. Now, this wave was huge. This was the wave that really, I think, just sparked a ton of craze for these Ninjago sets. There are tons of videos about these sets on YouTube with hundreds of thousands of views. I remember there was a kid, I don't remember, he was like Brick Boy or something, who got humongous on YouTube by reviewing these sets, and he became buddies of mine on Skype. This is a very weird little story. So I got kind of close to this kid, and he got ridiculously popular right off the bat from reviewing these Ninjago sets early, and somehow, despite the fact that he was like 12, he had money to get all of these sets. But for some reason, he decided to quit YouTube. He told me that he couldn't handle the cyberbullying he was get on YouTube. The trolls were in full force on his videos, so he just completely quit the craft altogether. Very weird tale about that. If any of you guys remember that, please let me know. It was a weird summer. Summer 2012 was humongous for LEGO, and these sets we're about to talk about here are a big reason for it. Also, as I mentioned kind of towards the beginning of this, instead of the snake staffs, we got the Fang Blades, which are just a tooth piece on a lightsaber blade with the same printed tiles on the underside of the blade. They were not super exciting. Also, I got none of these sets. Like, I got most of the sets from the Winter Wave. For some reason, I guess I was just too busy collecting the Lord of the Rings and Avengers sets at the time. I did not get any of these summer 2012 Ninjago sets. Looking back, I should have, because it would have really helped out my YouTube channel, but at the time, I did not. The first set, the only set that I don't really think anyone cares about, is Lash's Bite Cycle. This was a $25 set with 250 pieces. Oh, it's a perfect price per piece, which is beautiful to see. This set included Lasha and Cole, and Lasha was a green snake figure. It had the Vinamari Fang Blade, and it's an oversized motorcycle, but this time for the snakes. It actually worked pretty well, because it just kind of looked like a snake, but it had a couple of wheels, and it could roll around and, whip its tail, so not a bad thing. It did have a small side build for Cole that was like a tiny little blacksmith shop with a weapons rack and an anvil, but there's no covering or anything. It was a pretty underwhelming side build as they come, but gotta give credit to LEGO for actually including some semblance of a side build in this set. Now for $40 from this wave with 452 pieces, so a good price per piece, is the Samurai Mech. This set included Samurai X, who was later on revealed to be the character Nia, Baitar, and Snike, not Snake, Snike, just Snake with an I instead of an A. Very creative name there, LEGO. And at the time of release, this was the only LEGO Ninjago set ever to not include at least one ninja figure. Now, the character Nia has since gone on to become one of the ninja, but at this time she was referred to as Samurai X. This one also included the Constrictikai Fang Blade, and it was a big mech for Samurai X. And I would kind of say this is like the OG Ninjago mech. LEGO seems to release like at least one Ninjago mech a year this time, and the mechs are all usually pretty cool, and I have a few of them myself. The Titan mech that came out in 2019 is a fabulous set that I love and have on display in my room currently. I love Ninjago's mechs, and I think a lot of those sets kind of owe some credit to this set. This was like the Ninjago mech that paved the way for all other Ninjago mechs, and it had some really creative part usage, a good head design that used the Prince of Persia kind of dome pieces that looked really cool, and it used the train like rail guard at the front of a train piece as shoulder pads. There were some great uses of parts. There was a cannon on the shoulder. This was just all around a really cool set. You also got a side build for your snakes. It was a small catapult that could launch the snake figures, and both of these snake figures were on the shorter side. They actually had these short legs, and you could launch those snake figures at the mech. Pretty fun little play feature, and this was a very popular set that I think a lot of people love today and got quite a few votes for as one of the best sets from this line. Didn't win, we'll talk about that set later on in today's episode, but it did get a lot of mentions, and this set was remade in 2019 for $15. Yeah, you heard that correctly. This $40 set was remade for a $15 set that's just super small and uses tiny ball joints. Kind of weird, and I think that actually made a lot of people mad. Personally, I don't really mind them making small $15 mech sets because I love small LEGO sets that are, cheap and kind of impulse buys, but I can see why people would want a new version of this mech because it's so cool, and they did make a new version, but the new version is way smaller, not nearly as cool looking. So that is kind of a letdown. Okay, it's time to talk about the two big boys from this wave of Ninjago. These sets were ridiculously popular. They're still popular today, and they kind of paved the way for future Ninjago endeavors. For $80 with 622 pieces, we had the Ultrasonic Raider. This set was the first Ninjago set from this wave to include all four ninjas that were equipped with their golden weapons that we saw from the Season 1 Ninjago sets in 2011. So you got Kai, Jay, Cole, and Zane with this set. You also got Spitta and the snake villain titled Pythor P. Chumsworth. Very funny name for that character. We'll just call him Pythor for short for the rest of today's episode. And this was a big vehicle, one of the bigger ground vehicles for Ninjago at the time. It had some big treads at the front, and at the back it had a big wheel. So it had like two sets of treads and then one big wheel towards the back, giving it kind of like H-ish shape, more like a T cross shaped vehicle with a very big wheel at the back. And this thing was packed to the brim with weapons. There were weapons all over this vehicle design, giving it a very striking and intimidating look. And one part could detach, making this a flying vehicle as well, and some wings could fold out from that, and it was actually a very good 2-in-1, where the second vehicle looked pretty good, and the original vehicle also looked pretty solid without that vehicle on its back. And yet again, this was a widely popular release set. They kind of remade this set, more revamped it, I believe, in 2016. Not a direct remake, so I don't really count it. It's not a Ninjago Legacy set, but a very cool vehicle, lots of great playability features. And this one, yet again, got a lot of votes for the best set from Ninjago 2012, but it didn't win. One set won, and that is the next set we're going to talk about, and that is the Epic Dragon Battle. This set retailed for $120, making it one of the bigger Ninjago sets at the time. It had 915 pieces, not a very good price per piece, but this set included the Green Ninja, who briefly at the time was exclusive to this set. Now, the Green Ninja was the aforementioned Lloyd, and this is like the big reveal that Lloyd was the secret green 5th ninja. It was a big storyline plot point in that season of Ninjago as well. In addition to Lloyd, you also got Jay, Sensei Wu, Acidicus, Scalador, and Chonkin, some very cool snake figures as well. And this set lives up to its name. Epic Dragon Battle, it actually is a battle. There were 3 builds in this set. There was a decent sized snake shrine included with this set that could hold the Fang Blade, but you also got the Great Devourer, which is like the main snake villain, which is a big snake build, which is pretty cool. And then of course you got the Ultra Dragon itself, which was a 4-headed white and green dragon, and the 4 heads were the heads from all the dragons we saw with the 2011 Ninjago sets, which is pretty cool. And these dragon heads were all recolored in white, but still had a semblance of their original color, making them very unique. And this dragon had a handle at the back for easy playability. You could pick it up very easily, and even had a feature to flap its massive wings. This thing was a pretty crazy design, and kind of oddly, this set was remade in 2019, and ironically, the remake was a smaller set. It was an $85 set, but actually had more pieces at 951. Now, the remake was just the dragon. The shrine and the Great Devourer were not remade, just the dragon was remade, and instead of using the big rubbery dragon head pieces they used in this 2012 set, they brick built the dragon head pieces for that year. It was a very cool set though. I kind of want that set. Maybe if I see it on sale or something at some point, I might actually have to pick that one up because it's a really cool set. And this set, like I said, was voted on by my fans as the best Ninjago set of 2012. You know, I think there's some tough competition for it, but it's definitely a cool set, and it's very striking and unique, and there's a ton of stuff going on with this set, so I have no issue with this set winning that title. So that's it for normal box sets. Now we can talk about the spinner and booster pack sets. Now, I could spend hours talking about each spinner, how it looks, and the specific accessories and cards it comes with. I don't really think any of you guys want to know that information. If you want to know more about these spinners, just check out Brickset or Brickopedia, 2 of my biggest sources that I use for this podcast when writing the scripts. But let's talk about these spinners. Now, the spinners were a hot commodity at this time. They were flying off shelves. It was hard to find these spinners at Toys R Us. They really, like, seriously flew off the shelves. People were scalping them and selling them for a lot more on after markets. Now, let's talk about these spinner sets. There was a box spinner set for $20 with 219 pieces, the spinner training set. It came with Kendo Kai and his spinner, and it had a small training wall, and it had a weapons rack. That's about it. Not a whole lot going on there. 20 bucks, 219 pieces. Let's move on. You also had the starter set, which was a blister pack, which was pretty much the exact same concept as the starter set that came out in 2011. The 2011 starter set did wonders for me, over 100,000 views on my YouTube channel. I did not get this second starter set because I wasn't a big collector of the spinners, but this starter set here came with $20. It was a $20 set, had 62 pieces, and it came with Cole and Ratla on their respective spinners. Okay, those are kind of the outlier sets for the spinners. Now there are the $10 spinner sets that are all in blister packs, and we're going to read off all of the names here. We had Kai ZX, Lasha, Kendo Zane, Snappa, Samurai X, an easier way to get her from her original, the bigger set. We had Feng Sui, Spitta, Fang Dam, Slithera, and then Lloyd ZX, which is the iconic Green Ninja Spinner. This Green Ninja Spinner was like the holy grail of LEGO sets at this time. It was humongous. People were chasing after this spinner set. It was hard to come by. It was hard to get. Luckily, I actually got one of these Green Ninja Spinners at Toys R Us, like when they first put it out on shelves, and I reviewed it, and I'm pretty happy with that. And I actually was able to get one of these sets. I remember people were like fighting over this thing, paying like $70 for it on eBay, and the prices of these spinners now sealed on eBay is still extremely high. Crazy thing, and I'm not really sure why LEGO did away with the spinners in 2013. We'll have to talk about in the next episode of LEGO Ninjago, which will be a very interesting one in season 3 of Brickology. Now, there are a couple more spinners I want to mention. These are the Nrg Spinners. These ones came with completely exclusive figures of the Ninja in their quote-unquote Nrg form. Not energy, it's just the letters Nrg, which is also a company that sponsors the Houston Texans football stadium, but the Nrg Spinners. And these were basically like the Ninja, but one elemental color with some really cool printing to kind of show off that element that had some metallic kind of details here and there. These were really fantastic looking spinners, and I collected all 3 of these. We got Nrg J, who was completely blue, looked really cool. Nrg Cole was completely black with some orange highlight details, and Nrg Zane was like a sky blue with some white details, and J's details were added on in kind of like a limeish green. Really fantastic figures. And finally, for 2012 Ninjago sets, we have the booster packs. I believe this is the only year that ever got LEGO Ninjago booster packs. They were $5 each, and they were essentially the spinner sets minus the spinner. So you just got a small little booster that was like a small plastic bag. You could open it up. You got 5 trading cards, you got a minifigure, and you got a bunch of accessories and weapons that you could equip onto the spinners and the figures in the spinners, but there were no spinners. But it was an easy way to kind of expand your spinner collection. And the booster packs were Kendo Cole, Lloyd Garmadon, JZX, Zane ZX, Mesmo, Baitar, Lazaru, and Kendo J that was a shop at home promo back in the day. So those are all the booster packs, and that's it, y'all. That is all for Ninjago 2012 Ninjago Season 2. If I messed up, please let me know, because I messed up in the last Ninjago episode, and I want to hear your constructive criticism. But thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Brickology. I hope you tune in next week. It's going to be kind of a similar-ish theme to Ninjago. It'll be kind of a weird short episode that might come out on Thursday. I might have lied about my schedule being more normal. We'll just have to wait and see when that episode gets released. But please just tune in for next week's episode of Brickology. I'm super excited about that one. And the Ninjago 2013 episode will come next season. Don't worry, Ninjago fans. Thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode of Brickology. Stay safe. Find me online. I post daily on Instagram. I post a lot of videos on YouTube. Also, you can find me on Twitter and Facebook. And if you really love the podcast, support Lego Lee 329 on Patreon. A donation of like $1 a month goes a long way to seeing more awesome content of this sort. Thank you all so much for listening. Peace out. Bye-bye.